All right, welcome back. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my experience with ketamine infusion therapy. I'm going to explain why I did it, what it was like, how it impacted me, and what I'm doing after to continue the healing process. My goal with this video is not to convince you. My goal is just to share my story because I don't feel like there are enough stories like this one out there. And I think when I was making the decision, a video like this would have helped me. So this is who that video is for. What I did was ketamine infusions. So that's through an IV. I didn't do ketamine assisted psychotherapy. There was no therapist in the room with me. The goal was to dissociate from my body. And my understanding is that that's because a lot of times our body is storing so much trauma and so much pain, literally storing it like it's imprinted in our bodies, that it can be hard for us to see past it. So why did I do it? I felt lost. And I felt like I had tried everything else that I could that was legal. I'd seen 3 to 4 therapists at that point for upwards of 2 years. I had written a memoir, which can be very therapeutic. I practiced meditation every single day. You know, there was all of these things that I was doing to try to improve my life, but I just felt stuck. Another reason was because I had started to have, minor sort of suicidal thoughts, and I would start to joke about suicide at work or with friends. And lastly, I'd also had, I think 3 or 4 months before I signed up for these infusions, I had had an experience recreationally with DMT that really shook me. That sort of catapulted me into, all right, I definitely and desperately need to get some help. So how did I prepare? Number 1 is that I read about the experience I was about to have. Number 2 is that there is a specific kind of music I discovered through reading that one wants to listen to during the infusions if one chooses to listen to anything at all. And so I made a playlist of, relaxing classical music recommended by professionals in these books. Number 3 is that I had a friend at the time I have a friend who's a psychotherapist. I invited her to come with me to my first one. And last but not least, 4th thing is that I really worked on ridding myself of expectations and outcomes. I have to be open to the idea that what I want to work on might not be what I need to work on right now. And so rather than trying to control a specific outcome, I did my best just mentally trying to prepare myself for any outcome. What were the infusions like? This is what most people, if you look at the chapters, are going to skip to. I'm mostly going to focus on the therapeutic aspect of my experience because, again, me trying to tell you about my experience with ketamine infusions, it's either not going to make sense to you or it's not really going to be what I experienced because I don't have really a language for where I went and what I saw, and there are things that I have never experienced and there's not really been a language developed around it. But so logistically it was 6 infusions, and from there you can choose to do what they call boosters at your own pace. The 6 infusions do have they do want you to do those within a month. It cost me, at the time, I think about $3,000. So it's not a small investment. And now going to the actual infusion, there was a little bit of fast before you get here, eat a small meal, maybe drink some orange juice. And then once I got there, I sat in probably one of the most comfortable chairs of my life that leaned back. I put a weighted blanket over me, put my eye mask on, some headphones, and I played my music as the infusion started. We started at 70 milligrams. The first couple infusions, I felt slight dissociation. I didn't fully go there, but I definitely, felt a little bit like in the movie Get Out, right? When he goes into, is it the sunken place or something like that? Where not in the dark, scary way, but just in that I felt like things were getting farther and farther away from my thoughts, I guess, or from me. Like I could hear the people that were in the room with me or the noises, but it sounded like they were, 50 feet away from me. I had a lot of fear come up around distrust of others. And that was one of the reasons that I invited my friend to my first infusion, was because I still was a little bit skeptical of the paramedics and the space that I was going to be doing this in, right? I had fears like, what if they just give me a placebo? What if they just want my money? What if they like do something creepy to me while I'm in this fucking comatose state? And none of this was to do with how they presented it to me. This was all my own shit. Once we upped the dose for the second and third infusion, we went up to 90 milligrams and then up to 110 milligrams. And we introduced what they called a dynamic dose, which is basically just they give you a portion of your total dose in the first, they fucking fast track it so that you can get into the dissociated state faster and then stay there for the hour-long infusion. And so that's when I started to, revisit old memories and see them for what they actually were, and not the sort of trauma-informed view that I had painted them with as a young boy or as a young adult. I grieved the relationship that I had come out of months before my infusions. And not only that relationship, but every relationship that was fractured or destroyed after that relationship ended, right? And that was one of the key lessons I had in my first few infusions, was just when I go through a breakup, I am not only going through the end of that relationship, but I'm also experiencing and grieving the end of my relationship to my partner's family, to my partner's friends, to my partner's coworkers, all the people, their pet, all the people that I have met while I'm with them. And this doesn't necessarily have to happen for everyone, but the way that that relationship ended really sort of severed my tie to everyone else that I had met. And when we broke up, that wasn't immediately obvious to me that I had to grieve that. And then probably the most impactful part of the whole 6 infusions plus all the boosters I did after was this ability, this feeling during the infusion, during the dissociated state, which again, this is the goal. This is why it's the goal to reach a dissociated state, is that all of the day-to-day bullshit that I use to block connection and feeling love to and from other people, it vanishes. It doesn't matter. Like, with the relationship that had ended with my ex-partner, I thought, I had cheated on her, and, the way the relationship ended wasn't pretty. So I was convinced that this person hates me, right? This person has no love for me. How could they? And in that state of the infusion, that dissociated state, all of that sort of, it doesn't make sense, because that's not how love works. It's like that end of life moment where you're just like, man, it doesn't matter what has happened. There is love. Always there is love first. Number one, I had never actually felt what love feels like. And number two, I was in a place where I thought that a lot of the people in my life hated me for what I was doing, or judged me, or just thought that I was like some piece of shit, that it was selfish and blah, 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 right? Which is, in most people's cases, that's what leads people to start thinking about suicide, is like, oh, well, it would be better for me not to exist anymore. And that's why this medicine is so impactful for people with suicidal tendencies or thoughts, is that it gave me that feeling of, oh no, I actually do matter to these people. And I got to feel that, right? Not just hear it, but I got to feel how much love there is, and how much I matter to those people, and how much those people matter to me. And not only that, but I have managed to feel that in my regular sober state of consciousness. And so then we went up to 130 to 150 milligrams. And that's when, if I thought I had experienced dissociation, this was like, oh no, now I'm actually experiencing full dissociation. There's this fear and there's this tendency to want to go dark. And every time that happened for me, I just breathed and I remembered, oh, it's gonna be okay. Even if it goes there, it's gonna be okay. And as soon as I give myself that exhale of peace, I switch to, one of my favorite states in this experience, this feeling that I'm sort of flying or floating at like 1,000 miles an hour over mountains and valleys, but there's just this feeling that I am connected to something that is beyond my understanding. And in that state, there were many times where I thought, I would see myself sort of like working the land, or just doing construction or something physical with my body, where I would think like, man, I really am lacking this connection to the land, and this feels amazing. And I also, one of the last boosters that I did, I saw an image that I attached a feeling to of like, oh, I'm gonna make it. All of the things that I want, whatever success looks like for me in my life, I saw that I am going to get there. And it was just, again, it's not like I can predict the future. I'm not saying that is what this experience was doing, but in that moment, I just felt like, it's gonna be okay, and I'm going to get to where I need to get to. But anyway, so how this experience impacted me and what I'm doing to continue the process after, because I haven't done an infusion since last October, and I don't really have plans to do an infusion anytime soon. The most important thing I want you to take away from this video, and for anyone thinking about doing this, is that it can and probably will get a lot worse before it gets better. A lot of the emotions that I had not been feeling started to come up, and it started to come up at the most uncomfortable times, right? At work, as I'm taking somebody's order, or in the middle of a conversation with friends of friends that I'm meeting for the first time. All of these situations where I normally suppress these emotions, they were coming up now, and I was not, I could try to suppress them, but eventually they found a way to come out. And if that's not something that you're used to, I know I wasn't used to that can be scary, right? Because all of a sudden I've gone from not really feeling much and just doing, being productive and working out and going out and getting drunk and just living this fucking monotonous life, to all of a sudden you feel like you're dying and you're weeping in your bedroom on a Friday night while everyone else is out still living that same life that you had gotten used to. And so it can feel very alienating, very isolating anytime I have some of these psychedelic experiences, because a lot of people still don't understand what it's like. And so on that note, it's very important to have somebody that I can talk to about it. Somebody that I trust, or somebody that is a professional that can help me process what's happening, and or at least just create a space for me to process it myself. After my last infusion, a great example of this, after my last infusion, I had just gone through another breakup, and I literally came out of my infusion in tears that only got stronger and faster, and just turned into probably one of the most intense cries of my life. And at that time, my brother came in to where I was, and he just held me, man, for like an hour. He just sat with me, holding me as I was bawling and feeling like this doesn't make sense anymore, right? This world does not make sense. This is too painful. Just all of this stuff that I had suppressed. I had somebody there to empathize and to hold me and to just, make sure that I am not alone in that feeling. Since doing the ketamine infusions, I have stopped smoking marijuana. I began many more daily practices like walking in nature, journaling, meditation, like a more intense and more focused meditation. I let go of the relationship that had ended. And one of the things that I'm most happy about, actually, that I got out of these infusions is that my orientation to life was all around writing and output. And, I still do that. I still create. I'm making this video. I still write. but it's nothing like it used to be. It used to be a problem. This was also the first time I felt connected to a higher purpose, and the first time that I truly started to feel all of the trauma I had discovered intellectually in the year or 2 years prior to the infusions. One of the biggest wounds that I'm still to this day processing and working through is that at my core, I feel that I was a mistake, that I was a burden to my parents. The two people that I wanted to be the most excited to see me when I came into this world were the two people that were least emotionally available and least excited, because I was a reminder of unfelt pain that they were still carrying. And I got to actually see what that feels like, and to feel a lot of it, and to let go of a lot of it, and to understand that that does not mean they did not love me, and that does not mean that because of wherever they were at in their life that I am a mistake. So what I've been doing to continue the healing process is I dove into other psychedelic medicines with actual guides that can sit with me during the experience, so that I'm not just in a room with a paramedic. I tried ketamine nasal spray after my infusions, and I did that for about 3 or 4 months. It was positive. I enjoyed it, and I got out in nature a lot more, and it helped me definitely. But ultimately, it became another crutch. And I have in the time since, which has been about a year and a half, I have really truly focused on how can I live my life sober and be happy doing it and not need any of these things. How can I find peace in just being what I am without going anywhere else in my mind, or without needing to feel this altered state of consciousness. Thanks for stopping by, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.